The grand white marbled lobby of the Belmont Grand New York was an absolute fortress of untouchable luxury, dripping with the scent of imported white orchids and rare Arabian oud. Tonight was the annual International Diamond Gala, a high society event where billionaires, European royalty, and Wall Street elites gathered to flash their wealth. The air was filled with the soft clinking of $1,000 crystal flutes and the blinding, non-stop flashbulbs of the global fashion press. I was standing behind the sub-concierge desk near the secondary entrance, wearing the heavy, restrictive polyester navy blue uniform of the hotel's ground-level guest relations staff. My hair was pulled back into a strict, tight bun, and my employee badge read a simple, common name, Audrey Ross. To the hundreds of high society elites walking past me, I was completely invisible. A nameless, faceless asset, paid a miserable minimum wage to open doors, carry heavy luggage, and smile submissively while the true rulers of the world celebrated. Suddenly, a sharp, violent clatter shattered the aristocratic chatter of the lobby. A massive, tiered silver tray, loaded with expensive gold-leaf French macarons and vintage champagne, was deliberately flipped over, crashing brutally right at my feet. The dark pink raspberry coulis and sticky champagne splashed violently across my work shoes and soaked straight into the fabric of my uniform skirt. "Look at what you've done, you clumsy, incompetent peasant." A cold, painfully familiar voice boomed across the grand lobby, instantly drawing the attention of dozens of nearby journalists, security guards, and billionaires. My heart didn't just drop, it felt like it was instantly frozen in a block of ice. I slowly lifted my head, wiping a stray drop of champagne from my cheek. Standing directly in front of me was Carter Hayes, the newly promoted general manager of the Belmont Grand. He was the man who had been my fiancé for 2 long years, the man I had supported when he didn't even have enough money to buy a subway ticket. But he wasn't looking at me with love. His face was twisted into an expression of pure, unadulterated, elitist contempt. Beside him stood Meredith Astley, the heavily airbrushed, diamond-dripping heiress of the nation's largest jewelry cartel. She was leaning heavily against Carter's arm, looking at my stained uniform with a cruel, mocking sneer that showed she viewed me as nothing more than an insect beneath her designer stilettos. "Carter, darling," Meredith scoffed, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness and immense condescension, waving her lace fan in front of her face. "Is this the absolute trash you allow to work at a 7-star establishment? I thought the Belmont Grand was an elite, world-class hotel. Why is this dirty, low-level lobby maid lingering around the VIP entrance, ruining our gala dinner? She looks completely disgusting. Her presence is a literal insult to my social standing." Carter adjusted his custom-tailored Tom Ford tuxedo, his eyes cold, empty, and completely devoid of any human remorse as he stared down at me. He reached into his leather wallet, pulled out a thick stack of crumpled $20 bills, and threw them violently at my face. The paper money bounced off my forehead and landed directly into the puddle of crushed macarons on the floor. "Clean up this mess, Audrey, and then get your pathetic things out of my hotel," Carter announced, his voice booming across the grand lobby so loudly it bounced off the high gold-leaf ceilings. "You are officially fired, and our engagement is permanently over. Look at you. You've been a low-grade front desk girl for 2 years, earning pennies, wearing rags, and living in a pathetic studio apartment. I am the newly crowned king of the luxury hospitality industry. I belong in the presidential suites, rubbing shoulders with governors and oil tycoons. Frankly, a nameless, penniless orphan like you is a massive liability to my corporate branding and my future high society marriage. Before I could even utter a single word, the hotel's regional head of security came sprinting over, bowing deeply to Carter and Meredith. Mr. Hayes, Miss Astley, I am so incredibly sorry for this catastrophic breach of service. Audrey, strip off your employee badge and leave the property immediately. You are blacklisted from the entire international hotel sector. Carter didn't hesitate for a single fraction of a second. He took a heavy step forward, his polished patent leather shoes stepping directly onto the crumpled bills and the silver tray on the floor, crushing them further into the marble. If you ever show your pathetic face on any Belmont property again, Audrey, Carter hissed, his voice dropping into a low, vicious threat, I will have my security guards beat you and throw you into a federal prison for trespassing. You are nothing but a zero, a nobody. I looked down at the shattered silver tray on the floor. I looked at the champagne soaking into my uniform, but my hands stopped shaking. A strange, terrifying, glacial calm settled over my entire soul. The blindfold had been violently ripped off. For 2 long years, I had quietly sat at that front desk, handling the most difficult guests, organizing the entire logistical back end of the hotel, and secretly writing the global operational manuals that allowed this specific branch to achieve its 7-star rating. I had given all my corporate strategies to Carter, letting him present them to the executive board, letting him take 100% of the public credit just to build his career because I thought I was sacrificing for our future family. What Carter Hayes and Meredith Astley completely failed to realize, what their high-priced lawyers and background checks could never uncover because my true legal documents were encrypted within global private trusts, was that the name Belmont Grand wasn't just a corporate logo. It was my family name. My grandfather founded the entire multi-billion-dollar hospitality empire, and upon his passing, I inherited 100% of the absolute controlling voting stock of the entire global corporation. I wasn't a helpless, low-level lobby maid. I was the secret hotel Empress and the ultimate boss of every single person standing in this room. Carter hadn't just fired a poor girl. He had just humiliated the sovereign owner of his entire world. And tomorrow morning, I was going to ensure that his precious new empire was ripped away from him, leaving him completely blacklisted, broke, and begging in the very streets he tried to banish me to. To truly understand why the absolute owner of the world's most elite luxury resort portfolio ended up carrying heavy suitcases and wiping down check-in counters, you have to understand the foundational principles of my late grandfather, Arthur Belmont. He was a man who built a $60 billion empire from absolute nothingness. He had started as a 16-year-old immigrant, washing dishes in a greasy kitchen before saving enough money to buy a small, broken-down roadside motel. Even when he became a global icon, controlling over 300 ultra-luxury resorts across 5 continents, he never forgot the weight of honest labor. He despised the corporate sycophants and the flashy, newly rich managers who used power not to elevate service, but to feed their own pathetic, fragile egos. Before he closed his eyes for the final time in our family estate in Monaco, he placed a solid gold master key card into my palms. "Audrey, my beloved heir," he had whispered, his voice weak but filled with absolute conviction. The newly rich are blinded by the view from the penthouse suites. They look down from their balconies and forget that the entire hotel rests on the backs of the housekeepers, the cooks, and the receptionists at the bottom. Promise me you will spend 6 full months working anonymously within the ranks of our own ground-level staff. Look at how our managers treat the weak. Look at the true faces of the people who check into our rooms. Only when you understand the bottom can you rightfully rule the top. I kept my promise. For 5 months and 29 days, I buried my identity deep within the encrypted private trusts of the Belmont Group. I became Audrey Ross, a quiet, hard-working guest relations assistant. I sorted mail, carried heavy luggage for arrogant influencers, stood on my feet for 12 hours a day, and lived in a modest apartment. And that was when I met Carter Hayes. At the time, he was a struggling junior desk clerk, constantly screaming at by his superiors, living in a rented room 3 blocks away. He seemed humble, driven, and fiercely protective of me. We would share cheap corporate takeout food on the fire escape during our 15-minute breaks, talking passionately about our dreams for the future of the hotel industry. I fell completely in love with his drive, believing he was the honest, hard-working partner my grandfather wanted me to find. I wanted him to succeed, so I became his secret weapon. I stayed up until midnight every night, writing comprehensive revenue management models and VIP retention strategies, handing them to him so he could present them to the regional directors. I even used my private, anonymous executive line to leave glowing evaluation notes with the corporate board, forcing them to look at his portfolio. The strategy worked perfectly. Within 18 months, Carter experienced an unprecedented meteoric rise through the corporate ranks, culminating in his appointment as the youngest general manager in the history of the Belmont Grand New York. But the transformation was instantaneous, and it was horrifying. The humble desk clerk vanished. In his place emerged a grotesque, boastful social climber who suddenly viewed our simple life with absolute contempt. The moment his promotion went through, he stopped coming back to our apartment. He began wearing $5,000 custom suits, driving exotic sports cars he couldn't afford, and treating me like an embarrassing piece of old garbage in front of his new wealthy friends. "We operate in a completely different tier now, Audrey," Carter had told me coldly over a brief, painful 5-minute conversation in his grand office last week, not even looking up from his laptop. "Meredith Astley is the daughter of a billionaire diamond tycoon. Her family can secure our hotel's global luxury partnerships for the next decade. Courting a front desk girl who counts pennies is actively damaging my personal brand and my stand-in with the board. Do yourself a favor, pack your things, and stay in the shadows where you belong." I let him walk away, choosing not to utter a single word about my true heritage. I wanted to see just how far his greed would take him. I wanted to see the absolute limits of his arrogance. And tonight, right here at the International Diamond Gala, he gave me his final answer. He wanted the ultimate symbol of high society status, so he chose to publicly stomp on my face to prove his loyalty to his new billionaire heiress. They thought they had ascended to the heavens. They thought they could use their new corporate power to crush the weak without consequence. But as I stood in the center of the flashing lobby, watching the security guards approach me, I squeezed the golden executive keycard hidden in my pocket. The 6-month trial period was officially over. The silent Empress was about to speak, and her voice was going to tear their fragile new world to absolute pieces. I stepped out of the heavy, revolving glass doors of the Belmont Grand New York, the cold, biting autumn wind immediately whipping across my face. The icy rain was pouring down from the pitch-black Manhattan sky, heavy drops splashing violently against the concrete plaza and mixing with the sticky champagne and crushed raspberry macarons that still stained my navy blue uniform skirt. I stood completely alone under the grand gold awning, looking down at my ruined shoes. Behind the massive soundproof glass windows of the lobby above me, the International Diamond Gala was reaching its absolute peak. I could still hear the faint, muffled bass of the orchestra and see the flashing lights of the paparazzi cameras. Carter Hayes and Meredith Astley were probably standing in the center of the ballroom right now, clinking glasses, soaking in the fake, sycophantic admiration of the city's corporate elite. They truly believed they had just executed a flawless public humiliation. They thought they had permanently banished a broke, helpless front desk maid into the freezing mud without a single consequence. I walked past the long, flashing rows of exotic sports cars, armored luxury SUVs, and billionaire limousines parked in the VIP executive driveway, moving straight toward the edge of the public sidewalk. I reached into the deep inner pocket of my polyester work uniform, completely bypassing my basic employee ID card, and pulled out a custom, matte black encrypted satellite smartphone. I swiped across the dark, secure interface, entering a multi-layered biometric security sequence that bypassed the public cellular networks entirely, connecting directly to the sovereign mainframe of the Belmont Family Trust. I dialed a direct, maximum priority hotline. The call did not even finish its first mechanical ring before it was answered by a voice that radiated an immense, unyielding, and absolute level of financial authority. "Good evening, Ms. Belmont," Harrison Vance said, his deep, gravelly voice instantly cutting through the loud roar of the New York traffic. As the chief trustee of the Belmont Family Trust and the global head of corporate compliance, Harrison was a legendary corporate executioner whose single signature could freeze entire international banking networks and liquidate multinational hotel grids before the sun rose. Our automated network security monitors just flagged that your entry-level front desk credentials at the New York flagship were abruptly and violently terminated by a regional manager. We have been waiting for this exact cryptographic signal for exactly 6 months, Audrey. Is the field trial officially over, boss? "The trial is over, Harrison," I said, my voice completely losing the soft, quiet, submissive tone I used when Carter demanded I carry heavy luggage for his wealthy friends. It dropped into a freezing, razor-sharp register that carried the absolute sovereign weight of a $60 billion hospitality empire. I want a comprehensive, line-by-line financial and operational audit on the New York flagship, specifically targeting every single corporate expense account, VIP voucher, and structural contract managed by General Manager Carter Hayes over the last 12 months. I want his entire professional life dissected before the markets open tomorrow morning. On the other end of the secure satellite line, the rapid, heavy clacking of a high-security supercomputer keyboard echoed through the phone as Harrison opened the encrypted digital vaults of the Belmont corporate ledger. "Opening the Hayes dossier now, Ms. Belmont," Harrison Vance replied, his voice dropping into a lethal, strictly professional register. "The data is absolutely fascinating, boss. It seems Carter Hayes has been operating under the delusion that he is completely untouchable. Over the last 6 months, he has quietly abused the hotel's premium corporate line of credit to purchase over $300,000 worth of luxury designer gifts, high-end jewelry, and private yacht charters for Meredith Astley. Even worse, he has been skimming massive amounts of capital from our internal VIP event budgets, altering the invoice sheets to cover up his personal extravagances." A dark, icy smile slowly spread across my face as I watched the neon lights of Fifth Avenue reflect in the puddles of rain. "And what about his promotion, Harrison? How did a junior desk clerk secure the general manager position so quickly?" Harrison let out a dry, contemptuous laugh that dripped with corporate mockery. "That is the ultimate irony, Ms. Belmont. His promotion to general manager was never fully ratified by the global board of directors. According to the strict clauses of your late grandfather's will, Carter Hayes's appointment was strictly temporary and conditional. It was completely dependent upon a final, anonymous executive evaluation report that was supposed to be delivered by the primary shareholder tomorrow morning. He thinks he is the permanent king of this hotel, but legally, he is still just a probationary employee on a trial basis." "Perfect," I whispered, my green eyes narrowing into dangerous, razor-sharp slits as the jaws of the trap locked perfectly into place. "Harrison, hear my direct executive commands. I want the Belmont Family Trust to immediately freeze every single corporate credit card, executive expense account, and operational voucher assigned to Carter Hayes. Do not issue an internal system warning. Do not grant a grace period. Lock him out of the financial directory entirely. Furthermore, I want our elite legal phalanx to prepare immediate federal asset forfeiture warrants for commercial embezzlement and material fraud." "Consider it done, Ms. Belmont," Harrison Vance replied instantly, his tone thick with professional satisfaction. "The financial kill switch has just been activated. What are your instructions regarding tomorrow's emergency board of directors meeting at the flagship?" "Carter has gracefully threatened to have me beaten by his security detail and thrown into a federal prison if I ever step foot on a Belmont property again." I laughed softly, a dangerous, melodic sound that chilled the air around the concrete plaza. "He thinks he is going to stand before the global press tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. to announce his grand high society marriage and a multi-billion-dollar luxury partnership with the Astley Diamond Cartel. I think it is the absolute perfect stage to show him what happens when you attempt to steal an empire from its rightful empress. Have our entire legal team and the county sheriff deputies standing directly outside the boardroom doors at exactly 8:45 a.m. The Belmont Empire is at your absolute command, boss." I hung up the phone, dropping it back into my pocket. At that exact moment, a sleek, armored, midnight black Rolls-Royce Phantom with pitch-black tinted windows pulled up silently to the wet curb, completely bypassing the hotel security guards who tried to shout at it. The rear door was thrown open from the inside by a private security operative dressed in a flawless black suit, who bowed his head with absolute, unconditional reverence. I stepped inside the luxury vehicle, leaving my old, ruined employee badge sitting abandoned in the wet gutter. The lobby maid was officially dead. The Empress had returned. The night before the grand reckoning, the atmosphere inside my private presidential penthouse suite at the top of the Belmont Majestic, the ultra-exclusive private residential tower located across the city, was filled with a quiet, lethal preparation. The floor-to-ceiling glass windows offered a panoramic, sweeping view of the glittering New York skyline, dominated by the distant, glowing logo of the Belmont Grand. Sprawled across the massive white quartz island in the center of the kitchen were thousands of pages of fraudulent expense reports, bank routing receipts, and private text message transcripts, all pulled directly from Carter Hayes's corporate computer network by our cybersecurity team. I sat quietly in a plush velvet chair, wrapped in a simple black silk robe, sipping a dark, concentrated espresso as I turned the pages one by one. The depth of Carter's arrogance and betrayal was staggering. He hadn't just dumped me. He had actively altered the hotel's operational logs, systematically transferring the credit for every single major revenue strategy I had handwritten for him into his own personal file. He had signed secret agreements with Marcus Astley, Meredith's father, promising to give their diamond cartel exclusive, rent-free storefront space in every single Belmont luxury resort across Europe, completely slashing our profit margins just to secure his own high society social standing. He thought my silence was weakness, I whispered into the quiet room, my eyes resting on the old navy blue uniform sitting in the corner of the room. I walked over, picked up the stained fabric, and dropped it directly into the stainless steel trash chute. The heavy, mechanical sound of the chute closing echoed through the penthouse as the final remnant of my anonymous life vanished into the dark. I walked slowly back to my grand walk-in dressing suite. Hanging in the center of the room under a sharp spotlight beam of light was a pristine garment bag. I unzipped it, revealing the ultimate masterpiece of quiet luxury, a custom-tailored liquid gold silk blazer suit designed exclusively for me by a legendary fashion house in Milan. It possessed no loud logos, no tacky patterns, and no cheap sparkles. It was a garment of pure, untouchable, generational power. Attached to the lapel was a single, flawless crest shaped like the Belmont family shield, crafted from a rare black diamond. Beside the suit sat a velvet box containing my grandfather's heritage timepiece, a rare platinum Patek Philippe with a deep emerald face that matched my eyes perfectly. This wasn't jewelry worn by overnight internet millionaires or corporate climbers. This was a piece of history that signified absolute sovereign control over a global empire. I checked my tablet computer. On the screen, the live internal network monitors of the Belmont Grand were already flashing a quiet, chaotic shade of warning yellow. Carter's corporate credit lines were bouncing. His automated authorization keys for the executive dining rooms were being rejected line by line. He was probably frantically calling his tech support teams right now, completely convinced it was a minor computer glitch, completely unaware that his entire financial foundation had already been vaporized. Tomorrow morning, Carter Hayes would wake up in his leased luxury apartment, put on his expensive designer watch and drive his sports car to the flagship headquarters, completely convinced that he was about to become an untouchable titan of the global hospitality world. He and Meredith Astley would stand before the cameras, laughing about the poor front desk girl they had thrown into the rain yesterday. They truly believed that wealth was nothing but a loud suit, a flashy title, and the power to stomp on the faces of the people at the bottom. They didn't understand that the very marble they walked on, the air conditioning in their luxury suites, and the ground beneath their feet belonged entirely to the girl they had just fired. I closed my eyes, letting the silent darkness of the penthouse wrap around me. The hours were ticking away. The federal warrants were signed. The legal phalanx was prepared, and tomorrow morning, the secret hotel Empress was going to show Carter Hayes what happens when you attempt to build your castle on a kingdom you don't own. The next morning, the grand, high-ceilinged Astor Ballroom on the top floor of the Belmont Grand New York was a pressure cooker of international media frenzy. The massive room was packed with over 200 global fashion journalists, real estate reporters, and television crews, their high-end cameras forming a wall of continuous, blinding flashbulbs. On the grand stage, framed by a multi-million-dollar backdrop of white orchids and gold leafing, stood Carter Hayes. He looked like the absolute pinnacle of high society royalty, wearing a custom-tailored $5,000 tuxedo, his hair slicked back to perfection, a victorious, arrogant smile plastered across his face. Beside him sat Meredith Astley, draped in a breathtaking diamond-encrusted couture dress, her fingers flashing with rare pink diamonds. Her father, the legendary jewelry cartel tycoon Marcus Astley, sat proudly next to them, holding a golden fountain pen. They were broadcasting live to Wall Street and the global hospitality markets, preparing to sign a historic, multi-billion-dollar exclusive partnership that would give the Astley cartel rent-free luxury boutique space in every Belmont resort worldwide. Ladies and gentlemen of the global press and our distinguished international investors, Carter announced into the golden microphone, his voice dripping with an insufferable, newly rich arrogance as he adjusted his diamond-studded cufflinks. Today, under my vision as general manager, the Belmont Grand transcends traditional luxury. We don't just host the elite, we define them. And to maintain a brand of this absolute genetic purity, we must completely eradicate any lower-class liabilities from our infrastructure. True hospitality belongs exclusively at the absolute summit of wealth. Meredith Astley clapped loudly, throwing a deeply possessive, adoring look at her fiancé, while her father nodded in supreme corporate satisfaction. Carter was literally basking in the stolen credit of my handwritten operational manuals, using my revenue models to solidify his status as the young king of hospitality. Suddenly, the heavy, gold-plated double doors at the back of the ballroom were violently thrown open, the loud mechanical bang cutting straight through Carter's presentation and echoing like a gunshot. I walked into the ballroom, flanked by Harrison Vance and a terrifying, rigid phalanx of 12 international corporate attorneys and 6 uniformed county sheriff deputies. The sudden, aggressive interruption caused the entire room of international journalists to gasp, their cameras instantly pivoting away from the stage to capture our entrance. I walked down the velvet-carpeted center aisle, my custom-tailored liquid gold silk blazer suit capturing the light of the chandeliers, moving with a lethal, razor-sharp precision. The black diamond Belmont family crest on my lapel flashed like a warning beacon. My green eyes scanned the stage with a freezing, untouchable sovereignty. I didn't look like a front desk maid. I looked like an absolute executioner of global capital. Carter Hayes gripped the edges of the digital podium, his knuckles turning a violent shade of blue as the blood completely drained from his face. His microphone let out a sharp, panicked squeal. "Oh, Audrey!" Carter shrieked, his wealthy corporate voice completely shattering into a high-pitched, desperate panic before the live global cameras. He stumbled forward, pointing a trembling finger at my liquid gold suit. "What the hell are you doing here? How did a fired, blacklisted lobby maid bypass my security detail? And what are you wearing? Security! Head of hotel protection! Get this delusional, trespassing peasant out of my ballroom right now before I have her beaten and thrown into a federal cell." Meredith Astley leaped out of her seat, her diamond dress rustling as her face twisted into a snobbish aristocracy. "You disgusting, worthless tramp! How dare you show your Rack Roy face at my International Diamond Gala? Security, drag her out into the mud where she belongs. She is a literal stain on our high society event." The hotel security guards didn't move a single inch. They stood completely frozen, their eyes wide with terror as they looked past me, locking on to the towering, imposing figure of Harrison Vance. Harrison Vance stepped forward into the center of the press lights, his aura of absolute legal dominance instantly suffocating the room. He opened his heavy titanium briefcase, pulled out a thick stack of gold-stamped corporate ledgers and financial forensic balance sheets, and slammed them onto the main press table with a deafening thud that cut through the silent room like a blade. "The only person being dragged out of this flagship hotel today, Mr. Hayes," Harrison Vance commanded, his deep, booming voice projecting across the ballroom with a terrifying clarity, "is the criminal standing at that podium." Carter took a clumsy step back, mohoinen high dripping down his pale forehead, soaking straight through his custom collar. Mr. Vance, what is the meaning of this? I am the general manager of this flagship. I ratified this merger with the Astley family myself. Everything is in perfect corporate order." "Everything is an absolute fraud, Carter," Harrison replied coldly, pointing a finger at the flashing digital projection screens behind the stage. With a single command script sent from Harrison's tablet, Carter's elegant presentation was instantly wiped away. In its place, a massive red-bordered forensic financial audit sheet appeared before the global press. It detailed every single unauthorized wire transfer, every skimmed event budget, and every single cent of the $300,000 Carter had embezzled from the hotel's private vaults over the last 6 months to buy luxury designer gifts and diamond rings for Meredith Astley. At exactly midnight last night, Harrison announced to the flashing cameras and shocked journalists. The Belmont Family Trust activated the global financial kill switch on your accounts. You accepted under-the-table kickbacks, Carter Hayes. You systematically embezzled corporate capital, and you used our premium company credit lines to fund your pathetic, fake high society lifestyle. Your corporate cards didn't just bounce last night. They have been permanently liquidated by federal decree. The ballroom erupted into absolute chaos. The journalists instantly turned their cameras directly into Carter's face, filming his frantic, terrified expression as he reached into his tuxedo pocket, pulling out his phone. The screen was flashing a bright warning red: "Access denied, account seized." Marcus Astley stood up, his face twisted in absolute horror as he looked at his daughter's fiancé. "Carter, what is the meaning of this? Is your money fake? Are you telling me you used stolen hotel capital to secure our diamond merger? You broke, lying imposter!" Meredith shrieked in violent denial, clutching her diamond-covered head. "No, this is a lie. My Carter is the king of hospitality. He runs the entire Belmont empire. You can't kick him out over a minor accounting issue. He is the general manager." "He is absolutely nothing, Meredith," I said, stepping onto the stage, the cold, rhythmic ticking of my platinum Patek Philippe watch the only stable sound left in the suffocating room. Because Carter Hayes's permanent contract was never ratified by the board. He was on a temporary probationary trial, and his final evaluator is standing right in front of him. The senior international board director from Paris, an older legendary hotel tycoon named Marquis de Belmont, who had flown in secretly for the gala, stepped out from behind the press curtains. He didn't even glance at Carter or the Astley family. He walked straight toward me, his aristocratic posture shifting into a stance of pure, unconditional reverence, and bent his entire body into a deep, 90-degree bow from the waist. "Welcome to your flagship, Chairman," Marquis de Belmont whispered, his voice vibrating across the open microphones. "The global board of directors has been assembled via satellite link. We await your absolute command, Ms. Belmont." Carter Hayes felt his legs turn to complete water. He fell backward, his custom tuxedo catching on the edge of the gold leaf podium before he collapsed pathetically onto his hands and knees on the stage floor. He stared up at my liquid gold silk suit, his eyes wide, bloodshot, and completely hollowed out by a visceral, primitive terror. The woman he had treated like a penniless orphan, the woman he had thrown crumpled $20 bills at just 12 hours ago, was the absolute owner of his entire reality. "No!" Carter wept, his hands shaking violently as he looked at the black diamond family crest on my lapel. "No, your name is Audrey Ross. You are an orphan. You are just a front desk girl. This is impossible. This is impossible." "My name is Audrey Belmont, Carter," I said, looking down at his groveling figure with a cold, pitying smile that cut deeper than any steel blade. "My late grandfather, Arthur Belmont, built every single floor of this 7-star skyscraper. I didn't carry luggage because I needed your pathetic tips. I did it because I was honoring my family's heritage with silence. I own 100% of the controlling voting stock of this entire multi-billion-dollar empire. You didn't fire a maid, Carter. You just signed the warrant for your own destruction." Meredith Astley stumbled backward into the shattered glass of the champagne tower, her white couture dress instantly stained with the sticky liquids as she realized her family's reputation was completely dead. The very journalists she had invited to broadcast her high society triumph were now live streaming her ultimate public downfall to millions of people worldwide. Carter crawled forward across the stage floor, tears and sweat pouring down his pale face, his hands frantically reaching out to grab the edge of my polished leather shoes. "Audrey, please, I beg you, forgive me. I was blinded by the money and the title. I did it all to prove myself to you. I still love you, Audrey. We can go back to our old apartment. I'll give up the general manager position. Please don't throw me into prison." "Please!" I stepped back, completely evading his pathetic, desperate hands, and looked at the county sheriff deputies standing at the base of the stage. "Effective immediately," I commanded, my voice carrying the absolute, crushing weight of sovereign global capital. "The temporary employment of Carter Hayes is officially voided due to systemic felony embezzlement and commercial fraud. Deputies, put this thief in handcuffs and drag him out of my hotel right now." The grand gold-leafed Astor ballroom of the Belmont Grand New York fell into a suffocating, absolute silence. The illusion of Carter Hayes's multi-billion-dollar hospitality empire had completely dissolved, leaving nothing but the raw, bleeding reality of corporate ruin. Carter remained collapsed on his hands and knees on the stage floor, his custom-tailored tuxedo wrinkled and soaked in his own panicked sweat. He stared up at me, his eyes wide, bloodshot, and completely hollowed out by a visceral, primitive terror. Beside him, Meredith Astley stood completely frozen, her white couture dress stained with the sticky, spilled champagne from the shattered tower. Her father, the jewelry cartel tycoon Marcus Astley, stared at the flashing red forensic audit screens on the wall, his hands shaking so violently his gold fountain pen slipped from his fingers and rolled into the debris. The wall of international journalists and television crews went into a chaotic frenzy. The flashbulbs exploded in a non-stop, blinding rhythm as the county sheriff deputies stepped forward, pulling out heavy steel handcuffs. They grabbed Carter Hayes by his wrists, clicking the metal tightly around his arms in front of the live global broadcast. "Carter Hayes and Marcus Astley," the lead deputy announced, his voice projecting across the open microphones with the cold, unyielding weight of federal law. "You are officially under arrest for commercial embezzlement, multi-million-dollar wire fraud, and grand larceny against the Belmont Family Trust. Hands behind your backs. Right now." Carter went completely hysterical. He struggled like a wild, trapped animal as two massive deputies hoisted him off the floor, his custom jacket violently tearing at the shoulder seam. "Audrey, no, save me. Tell them it was a corporate misunderstanding." Carter shrieked, his wealthy corporate voice completely shattering into a high-pitched, pathetic scream that bounced off the high gold ceilings as the officers dragged him toward the exit. "You can't do this to me. I built the revenue model for this hotel. I am the face of the Belmont Grand. Audrey!" I stood dead center on the stage, my custom-tailored liquid gold silk blazer suit capturing the lights of the chandeliers, my green eyes watching his downfall with a freezing, absolute calm. I felt no anger. I felt no pity. I only felt a deep, chilling validation of my late grandfather's timeless wisdom. Meredith Astley lunged forward, her manicured nails clawing at Carter's face as the deputies forced him past her toward the executive elevators. "You parasitic, lying fraud!" Meredith screamed hysterically, her aristocratic face twisted in pure desperation as she realized her family's reputation was permanently ruined. "You stole that money! You lied to my father! You told us you were the permanent king of this hotel. You ruined our dynasty. You are nothing but a broke, low-class lobby clerk." Under my direct executive orders, the deputies did not allow them to leave quietly through the private basement exits. They were marched straight down into the grand, white-marbled main lobby and pushed out of the towering glass entrance into the public plaza, right at the absolute peak hour of Fifth Avenue traffic. Hundreds of wealthy business executives, high society residents, and paparazzi stood packed around the sidewalk, watching the spectacle. Carter's least exotic sports car was already being hooked onto the chains of a heavy flatbed tow truck, lifted into the air to be repossessed by the central banks. His expensive designer luggage and the luxury clothes he had purchased using my family's stolen credit lines were tossed unceremoniously into heavy, black plastic trash bags and piled on the wet concrete. I walked out onto the grand marble steps of the hotel plaza, Harrison Vance standing respectfully half a step behind me. I looked down at the weeping, handcuffed ex-fiancé who had thrown crumpled bills at my face just 12 hours ago. "You told me to stay in the shadows where I belong, Carter," I said, my voice cutting through the roar of the New York traffic with a razor-sharp clarity. "You told me that a man with a flashy title belongs at the top, and a girl who counts pennies belongs in the mud. But you forgot the most fundamental rule of the concrete jungle. Never insult the person who built the mountain you are trying to stand on." Carter wept openly, collapsing onto the wet concrete plaza surrounded by his trash bags of clothes, completely exposed to the entire world as a broke, fraudulent failure. The purge of corruption within my hospitality empire was swift, absolute, and merciless. Within 24 hours of Carter Hayes' arrest, our global compliance teams launched a massive, comprehensive internal sweep across every single one of our 300 luxury resorts worldwide. Any manager who had ever accepted a bribe, mistreated a ground-level worker, or used their corporate power to feed their own fragile ego was instantly terminated and permanently blacklisted from the international hospitality network. The morning after the public eviction, I walked back into the grand lobby of the Belmont Grand New York. I was no longer wearing the restrictive navy blue employee uniform. I wore an elegant, sharp charcoal wool dress, and my grandfather's platinum Patek Philippe watch rested beautifully on my wrist. The entire front desk staff, the bellhops, the kitchen crews, and the housekeepers were lined up in two perfect, flawless rows, bowing their heads in deep, unconditional reverence as I approached. Standing right at the front of the line was Maria, a quiet, older housekeeper who had worked at the flagship for 15 long years. The very woman Carter Hayes used to scream at every single morning just to show off his authority. I stopped directly in front of her, a warm, genuine smile completely replacing the glacial calm on my face. "Good morning, Maria," I said gently. "Good. Good morning, Chairman Belmont," Maria stammered, her hands trembling with a mixture of awe and nervousness. "Starting today, Maria," I announced, my voice projecting across the silent, marbled lobby, "you are officially promoted to the head director of Global Guest Relations and Quality Compliance for the entire Belmont Hospitality Group. Your salary is quadrupled effective immediately, and you will hold a permanent seat at our executive board meetings to ensure that every single worker in this empire is treated with the absolute dignity and respect they deserve. No one will ever scream at a worker in my hotels again." Maria burst into tears of pure joy, her hands covering her face as the entire lobby erupted into a loud, heartfelt applause from the staff. My grandfather's final wish had been perfectly fulfilled. The foundation of the empire was officially secure. 1 full year has passed since that stormy night when Carter Hayes flipped a silver tray of macarons at my work shoes. The multi-billion-dollar empire of the Belmont Hospitality Group has reached unprecedented heights of global success. We didn't build our new resorts by focusing on the flashy, fake arrogance of the newly rich. We built them on a foundation of absolute integrity, raising the wages of our essential ground-level staff and establishing free educational grants for the families of the people who clean our rooms and open our doors. I stood in my magnificent glass-walled penthouse office at the very summit of the Belmont Grand, sipping a dark espresso as the golden evening sun set over the sprawling New York skyline below. Sitting in the center of my massive mahogany desk was the solid gold master executive keycard, resting right beside a beautiful, fully restored photograph of my late grandfather, Arthur Belmont. Harrison Vance walked into the suite quietly, stepping to my side and placing a secure, red-bound legal disposition file onto my desk. "The final judicial asset forfeitures have just concluded, Chairman," Harrison said with a respectful nod. I opened the file, reviewing the final updates on our legal ledger. Carter Hayes and Marcus Astley's financial connections had been completely dismantled. Due to grand larceny, systemic felony embezzlement, and commercial fraud, Carter Hayes was sentenced to 12 years in a maximum security state prison with absolutely no chance of early parole. The legal report attached his mugshot from the central database. The slicked-back, handsome hotel manager who once drove an exotic sports car was now completely bald, his face hollowed out by pure despair, wearing a coarse orange inmate jumpsuit. He spends his long days performing grueling, repetitive, hard labor in the prison's industrial laundry facility, literally scrubbing the dirty, heavy linens with a plastic brush for exactly 12 cents an hour. As for his snobbish fiancé, Meredith Astley, every single dime of her family's wealth was seized to pay back the banks and the massive legal damages owed to the Belmont Family Trust. Today, stripped of her pink diamonds, her couture dresses, and her high society status, she lives in a tiny, cramped apartment in the lower districts. To survive, she works the grueling early morning cleaning shift at a low-end public bus terminal, literally sweeping up the dirt left behind by the very working-class citizens she spent her entire life calling genetic liabilities. I closed the file, a deep, beautiful peace wrapping around my heart as I looked out at the infinite horizon. Justice had delivered its absolute perfect verdict. Carter and the Astley family truly believed that because I chose to walk among the workers, carry the luggage, and honor my grandfather's heritage with silence, I was a nobody to be stepped on and humiliated. They forgot that the silent titans of this world don't need to bark to prove their dominance. They simply wait for the arrogant dogs to trip over their own noise. And when you attempt to stomp on a silent empress, she will let you build your entire castle on her land, just to evict you into absolute nothingness. Never mistake humility for weakness, because the nameless lobby maid cleaning up after you today might just be the billionaire empress who owns your entire world tomorrow. Thank you so much for listening to this story on Cold Calm Stories 1. If you believe that karma always delivers the absolute perfect justice, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more deep dive dramatic tales. See you in the next story.